Hello, welcome to 30 Minutes. I'm Rick Anthony. Radnor's 6th Ward Commissioner Don Curley has an awful lot going on in his jurisdiction. Residential development, the disposition of a building that was purchased by the township years ago for public use, and what to do about Penn Medicine zoning requests for the property on King of Prussia Road. All of those are major projects, and there's more. Welcome, Commissioner. Good to see you again, Don.
Thank you, Rick.
Thanks for coming back. It's been several weeks since you were last here. At that time, we were talking principally about the Willows and some other issues in your ward, the township.
Sure.
And although it's only in your ward, there are ramifications that affect the entire community.
That's right.
Let's start with a favorite subject, taxes. Mm-hmm. There is an impression, a perception, that Radnor's taxes, their tax rate, is one of the highest in the state. Certainly compared to some of the other equally affluent communities around us. What are the facts? When I get a bill, tax bill, it's in 3 parts, I think: county, township, Radnor Township, and then the Radnor School District. Is that correct?
Yes, that's my understanding also.
3 parts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you put all those together, how do you address at least the perception that the total is higher than anybody else around us? Is that a fact?
Well, I suppose like a lot of things, there's a kernel of truth, and then there's interpretation beyond that. Mm-hmm. So first, look at your tax bill, the 3 components that you identified. By far the largest part of that is the school component, because by far the school is much more expensive to operate than a municipality. So relative to the school district, the township taxes are low. The township and county taxes are roughly the same as I understand them, and together are still significantly smaller than the school district. Then relative to other municipalities, well, that's open for interpretation. Our millage rate doesn't seem to be terribly high or terribly low. It seems to be, middle. But millage rates can be deceiving because that depends upon market value of housing and also appraisal. So from the perspective of spending, I think on a per capita basis, you could view us as spending more on a per capita basis than a lot of municipalities. I would say it's consistent with the Lower Merion probably spends more than we do. They have a bigger budget, bigger municipality. As you go west in these municipalities, you have a little different mentality. They don't want the same level of services that people in Radnor want, and consequently, my understanding is that there is less spending as a result of it, but with that comes fewer services.
I've also heard it said that one of the issues in Radnor Township is that we don't have a commercial tax base as some other communities do, other municipalities. Is that an issue?
I don't think that's accurate. So looking at our budget, our general fund is something on the order of $34 million. We get about $9 million of that from the business privilege tax. There's other business taxes too, but simply the business privilege tax alone is about $9 million. That's a very sizable amount of tax money. Our real estate tax is something on the order of 12 to 13 million. So you can see that it's a sizable amount of tax revenue. It's also increased significantly over the last 6 or 7 years beyond our expectation. So I'm not aware that. My understanding is yes, we have a significant base of business, and that base of business is contributing significantly to the tax revenue of the township.
It wasn't that long ago that the commission, the board, had to wrestle with the budget. And so the question is, what were the sticky issues in trying to come up with a budget that was fair from a taxpayer standpoint, but satisfied the needs of the township in providing service, continuing to provide services?
Yes. Okay. Great question. So let's start with sort of segue with that idea of the business privilege tax. That tax, the revenue exceeded expectations significantly over the last 6 or 7 years. And that increase in revenue allowed the township to expand its spending more significantly than it increased its real estate tax. So we were something on the order of a $26 million entity in 2010 when I became commissioner. the majority expanded the spending to something on the order of 42, 43 million over that period. Three major funds: sewer fund, stormwater fund, and general fund. And there were tax increases in that.
Right.
But a sizable amount of the revenue that paid for that expansion was the revenue that came in from the business privilege tax. That won't so two problems with that. One is that won't continue indefinitely. You know, at some point that has to plateau, and then we still have the spending. You know, we're obligated for that. And then we also have to wonder, you know, are we sending businesses away by having business privilege taxes that are too high? So that's a balance, and we have to strike that balance. Then the particulars of the budget, I say to me there are three things that stand out. So, you know, first let me say that I have confidence in our staff, mostly, you know, in the honesty and the technical capability of the staff, and also of the volunteer advisors to this process. I have some concerns about, you know, first category would be what I'll call pension, OPEB, and healthcare, meaning these costs. OPEB is other post-employment benefits. Okay. So those costs rose significantly, on the order of several $1 million over a 7 or 8 year period. Mostly non-discretionary. You know, we can control them on the margins, but we can't stop paying pensions. We can't stop paying our.
Do we have an aging employee population?
I don't know that we have an aging employee population. We have the same issues that pensions throughout the land have, which is mostly people living longer than the actuaries. It's a, you know, it sounds a little morbid, but that had a financial ramification to us. And then we have a period in which it was difficult for any municipality to meet the targeted goals that the actuaries. The actuaries just put the number in, but it's the financial advisors put a number in.
When the stock market tanked, of course.
Yes, and it's not just one event. It's you know, you have an assumption year after year after year, and you don't meet that assumption. What you end up with is a gap, and that gap has to be closed by the taxpayers.
Well, you changed the assumption.
Yes, and we have taken significant steps in that direction. We've eliminated the pension for a certain group of employees. We did change the assumption. We lowered the assumption, which makes it less risk averse for the township. And then we modified, and the unions deserve some credit for this because they met us halfway. We modified contracts, both police and non-police, in a way that protects both of us against, neither one of us has an interest in the municipality being insolvent or incapable of paying. So we made some structural changes that protected the capability of the pension system to proceed, and the OPEB benefits to proceed.
So as of today, we don't have the same pension liability problems that some other municipalities have?
No. We have all of the pension liability problems. The changes,
unfunded liability.
Yes, we have a very significant unfunded liability. Right. The changes that we made were changes going forward, meaning we brought new employees that come in do not produce the same pension requirements and the same unfunded liability requirements or OPEB requirements that employees from 10 years ago do. Right. So that's a benefit that will,
going forward,
two decades from now, that will be more beneficial than it is today. That nugget of pension obligation, unfunded obligation, we are paying it, or also paying it significantly, something on the order of $200,000 per year, up to a 10-year ramp up, which it'll cap at $2 million a year, and then it will become fully funded sometime around 2060. So that just shows you the magnitude of the problem, that even with $2 million a year, it still takes something on the order of $40 million for it to become funded.
And even with those staggering numbers, we're in better shape than a lot of other municipalities throughout the state.
Yes, we are in better shape, my assessment, largely because of our capability to pay, not so much because other municipalities did a better job, or we did a better job of managing the liability. Our liability is relatively average compared to our problematic liability is relatively average. Our capability to pay that is better than most municipalities.
Okay. So that was one area.
Second would be spending. I mentioned that, how regardless of whether, you know, we were a $25 million entity circa 2010. Now we're a $42 million entity. Those three funds that I mentioned are the three most significant funds. Regardless of whether those expenses are good, regardless of whether they're discretionary or non-discretionary, you can't keep them going forever. You can't sustain that projection without a catastrophe looming. So the board has to do a better job of managing the spending, or otherwise it will fall apart catastrophically. And then the last item in the three that I mentioned the last item is debt. So our debt went down, circa 2007 through 2014. But in 14 we borrowed $10 million for the Ardrossan purchase, and in 15 we borrowed $8 million for a small handful of infrastructure projects or investment projects. $18 million total over a 14-month process that sent our debt ratio back to what it was circa 2000, circa recession era. And so
but if you're going to borrow, now's the time to do it.
now's the time. So but what we have to do is we have to recognize that we have significant OPEB obligations, significant pension obligations, rising healthcare costs with no expectation that that those costs are going to come down. And we have to be careful about borrowing in that environment because we have huge costs looming in the future.
Sticky wicket.
Yes, it is. So that's government. It's not it's nothing new, and we just have to take all those constraints and work them into a budget.
But in the face of all of that, Radnor recently was named one of the safest townships, communities in Pennsylvania by the FBI.
Yes.
We do have an outstanding police department, and that certainly is a major contributory factor. But are there other factors that account for the fact that we are one of the safest communities? And again, not that we don't have our problems. I know we do. There's some problems that spill out from the big city. Nonetheless, there is a sense of security, civility in this township.
Yes, and it's wonderful. I mean, one little story, I hope it's okay.
Please,
So as commissioner, you get most of your information at church, at Boy Scouts, at Little League, at township basketball, at township recreation events. People just come up to you and they tell you their little stories, or they give you your opinion. A fella who I didn't know too well came up to me and said, "Yeah, the other night we had woke up at 12:30. Somebody was pounding on my door. I turned the light on. There's a 200-pound, 25-year-old man pounding at my door, trying to knock my door down. He called Radnor Police. He called 911.
Yes.
And then, as he explained it to me, in what was a kind of an extraordinary turnaround, very quickly, from when Radnor received the call from Delaware County, the first Radnor officer showed up on scene. Because this particular person wanted no trouble, within seconds of the Radnor police officer showing up, the fellow was face down in handcuffs, in control. 30 seconds later, a second officer arrived. 30 seconds after that, a third officer, and then, as this person explained, shortly after that, two municipal officers from a surrounding municipality arrived.
Wow! So
in a dramatically quick amount of time, the situation was made completely safe.
Yes.
So one of the reasons why that we are safe is because we have the capability to respond very quickly, and we have to preserve that capability. One of the reasons why I'm troubled by our spending is that we'll have what we'll call municipal crowd out, which is we won't be able to spend on police because we've chosen to spend on other things. So we have to be able to protect our capability to respond quickly. I took a ride along with the police. I had no agenda when I took the ride along, but my takeaway was the vast geographic area that we have to cover and how important it is that we be able to respond quickly. So policing is very expensive. In 2016, there's no alternative to that. We can try to make it, we can try to take steps to make it less expensive, but the reality is it's a very expensive endeavor. It's human labor, which is very expensive. So,
but are we spending more on technology to support the police and body cameras and so on?
Yes, we're doing all of that, but I just don't want to pretend that this isn't like an assembly line where we can replace them with robots. There's policing is an expensive entity. It is it's human power, human labor oriented, and if we want the safety that it provides, we are going to have to pay the cost of it. To me, that's something that is very worthy that we should be protecting.
I was on Villanova's campus. This just occurred to me. I was on Villanova's campus the other day. I was over to get a parking permit because I teach there. And somebody made the comment that they understood that the Villanova Police Department, well, security, I guess, public safety and security, is moving in the direction of becoming a police department to carry arms and so on.
Yes.
Do you know the status of that?
Yes, that's a very important township issue.
Yeah.
So Villanova made the decision that its security force should become a sworn police force. So there's a distinction. It is not that just one day the security guards will pack firearms and have the capability to arrest people. It's that Villanova then will become subject to the rules of police operation the same way that a municipality would. They're governed by a different set of rules, but it's still a set of rules for police forces, not for security forces. As part of that, the township and and Villanova entered into a memorandum of understanding that outlined the cooperation and really the separation too, where the authority would lie, how it would be separated. And the goal is to have, so I guess two things we'd want to try to recreate. There are police forces at universities all throughout the land that are little islands.
Yes.
And they, Philadelphia being one, Drexel has its own police force, Penn has its own police force. It's my understanding they work well with the surrounding Philadelphia police force, so we want to create that. And then also there's boroughs that are wholly contained and surrounded by other municipalities, and there's relationships there. So the idea is that we would create that type of agreement that would make the two forces augment each other rather than...
Wouldn't one consequence of that be that we are, the Radnor Township, is somewhat relieved of some responsibility?
Yes.
To cover the campus?
So both forces will augment each other, meaning that if Radnor is in need of sworn officers from Villanova to
so there's that
protect
kind of
it,
reciprocity?
Yes, and if Villanova needs the protection, so that relationship is like the relationship we have with Tredyffrin. I mentioned it earlier about the surrounding municipalities and the fire departments have similar agreements. So we would have that type of agreement, but Villanova will take responsibility for the lesser things that are time-consuming, and then that frees the Radnor officers to concentrate on the other areas.
Yeah.
My opinion is that the arrangement will make us safer. I believe it's a good thing. I voted for it.
Yeah.
The reality is that even if we didn't like it, it was beyond our control. But our job was to make it as good as possible, and I believe it's a good agreement.
Another sticky issue. What's the status of Penn Medicine's request for a zoning change in the property they bought, I guess, from Wyeth on King of Prussia Road?
Okay, so a little background, if you don't mind.
Please,
years back, Biomed came and they said, here's this big nugget in the center of your traffic-filled area. Let us change the zoning. Let us use mixed use, and we'll reduce the amount of traffic. Same amount of building, maybe even a little bigger building, but less traffic. Good concept. My opinion, the proposal that proposal wasn't something that I supported because I saw it as overly complex, and I saw it as producing bigger buildings and not really guaranteeing that we would get less traffic. Regardless, so the way the zoning is now, they have the capability for a sizable amount of office space, and office is the most problematic from a traffic perspective. So they got out of it because it just sort of got unwieldy for them. The township then initiated made an attempt to rezone it, and the township's attempt was the same thing. I had no reason to believe that it would be successful. I had reason to believe it would be problematic, so I was not supportive of the township's endeavor. Then Penn Medicine came in. They purchased the property from Biomed. They made a third attempt at it. Their attempt was better in that it learned from the lessons of the previous two attempts that were problematic, but still required, had elements that would make me not support it and had problematic elements. Subsequent to that, I prepared a draft that I thought would accomplish the mission of reduce traffic and also be protective in the ways that the previous three were not. So that's the version. Right now, for all intents and purposes, all the versions are before the township, meaning the township could choose no action and revert to the baseline. It could accept the township version that it worked through, probably a year and a half ago. It could accept the Penn Medicine version, or it could accept the version that I presented and that we've been working through the Planning Commission over the last 2 or 3 months.
Is it old information? Was there a hotel contemplated as part of the complex?
That would be, yes, there would be. So the idea is that office is most traffic intensive, and it also concentrates it in the morning and the evening.
Yes.
So 2 goals would be to have uses that produce less traffic, and then have uses that distribute that traffic evenly so that you don't have super concentrated traffic at peak hours. And it's my understanding that if we allowed this mixed use, one of the uses that would come in would be a hotel. There's no plan, there's nothing official on that, but it's been stated as much at a public meeting by one of the property owners that they would use this to produce one of the uses would be a hotel.
So they're still pending, and how long do you think it will remain pending? This could go on indefinitely, I guess.
Well, it could go on indefinitely, but it won't go on indefinitely, meaning that we've been at this long enough where we need to make a decision. So September will be on the agenda, and I would imagine that we would make a decision. So at this point, I see it's multiple choice. It was a concept before. How do we change the zoning? The zoning as I see it was problematic, outdated zoning that concentrated big uses in the center of town. First, we make the decision, do we want to change it? There was an interest in changing it. I think it makes it more contemporary. Now it's sort of multiple choice. We have 4 different versions to choose from. I suspect we will pick one of those 4. If we don't pick one of those 4, I suspect we'll just go back to the baseline zoning and take our chances with the baseline zoning.
Well, the other one is the Willows. It just won't go away. The Willows Mansion on Darby-Paoli Road. Again, in the interest of full disclosure, I live close to that property, so I have a special interest in it. But what is the current situation with regard to the disposition of the Willows, the mansion, and whether or not it will remain exclusively for public use?
Okay, so I think we all live close to it, and we all have a special interest in it. It's it's a big parcel of relatively natural land.
The park itself?
Yes,
it's beautiful.
in a municipality and a region that is largely fully developed. So we all have an interest in it. The plan to put the caterer in there and the plan to put the school in there, I think, have been temporarily stopped. So, I'm certainly on the side that what I'm calling the 6 Ps. The park has to be primarily and predominantly public, and the use has to be primarily and predominantly park. So,
I like that.
As I see it, a caterer is not a public use. So, like the logic of the caterer was, it's public because you can all spend $30,000 to throw a party there. I don't see that as public. The same with the school, where the school is open to anybody who pays the tuition. I don't see that as a public use. So for better or for worse, I think those have temporarily been set aside. And the plan, as I see it, we have several citizen groups that have said, let us come up with ideas. We found that we were making decisions with only speculation about costs.
Yes.
So we engaged a professional to give us planning level estimates of costs for a little subset of type of conceptual uses. We'll have them presented to us likely in September. Then in October, we'll likely have citizens groups present ideas. And then what I'm targeting and what I'm trying to push for is a conceptual decision. I'd like to separate it into 2. So the first, a conceptual decision about, is the building worth keeping or is the building worth changing? So we make that decision. Then if we decide that we can't keep the building in its current form, what do we do with the property and the building?
Yes.
If we decide that we want a solution in which we keep the building in its current form, what is it that we do with the building?
Yes.
Then if we make that, again, it's a concept. It's not a detailed plan of, you know, how big will the windows be and what color will the paint on the outside of the building be. It's a concept of a commitment to either the building in its current form or the building in a new form.
Yes.
With those 6 Ps being, for me, essential. And then that gets put into the budget in December, and then that becomes actionable in 17 because the funds to do it are in the budget in 16.
Okay, so that beat goes on at least through, I guess, the end of this year. Well, October there'll be presentations.
Yes.
And then some deliberation after that.
And so a couple of things. That's as fast as it can go. That might seem absurdly slow to those in the business world, but
no,
we're not a business. We're a government. We should be business-like, but it would take us longer if we simply met in a backfilled room and made a decision.
Well, if it hadn't been slowed down, we might see a private school in there about now.
Yes.
The way it was going at the time.
Yes, or we might have seen a caterer. I mean,
Yes.
It certainly was communicated to me by several people that, you know, in Radnor you have people who are very involved, but not everybody wants to be involved. Some people need to go to work, you know, and they need to put their kids on the bus, you know, and so they rely on us to make these decisions for us. Some people communicated to me that, you know, a board meeting outside, you know, on 2 weeks' notice, making a decision in February about the prospective use of the building was not a fair way to do it. So regardless, there's no nefarious intent, but the process will be adequately slow, adequately thoughtful. I'm just trying to get it to move from general to particular because we have a little history of getting deep into the weeds and the particulars before we make general decisions about the use of the building.
And there's this underlying assumption that the building, depending upon the cost, is worth saving. But the building itself has no architectural or no historical merit.
Well,
at least,
right.
From
so
what
that, and clearly that's a subjective decision. For some, the building has great emotional appeal,
sentimentality,
and for others, it is nothing but it's like having a garden shed in your backyard.
If we were a business and we had an unused asset that was sucking up resources, we'd say tear it down.
Yes.
We don't need it. We don't.
And so
that's
what I'm hoping we get in September is information about the costs, so that, you know, those that value the building. I'm not real at this point. I'm not trying to talk anyone out of valuing the building. I'm simply trying to say that if you value the building, you have to recognize that you value it at the cost of blank. And then we can make a decision about whether the cost is worth it. So far, I feel like what we've said is keeping the building. So let me even back up. I don't believe that any of the proposals keep the building. I don't believe that turning the building into a catering facility and then leasing it to someone for 29 years saves the building. It would be like if your grandmother told you that she couldn't afford her house, and you told her that you would rent it to someone else and she can live in the shed. You know, you wouldn't call that saving your house for your grandmother. So I don't believe that the proposals that the majority supported saved the building. I thought they gave the building away to a commercial entity. But what we were doing is we were just saying the building is so valuable, regardless of the impact of the park or regardless of our capability to use it. We want to, you know, we're going to proceed down that road. And to me, that was a mistake. We're going to have better capability to make a good decision in September.
Well, I commend you and your colleagues for.
Thank you.
This has been a tedious process.
Yes, it is.
And
tedious.
there's no way to make everybody happy. You know, you're going to.
Correct.
Somebody's going to be unhappy.
Yes.
One last one, and that's the Ardrossan Farm. I'm confused. I know a number of other people are confused. How much of that wonderful, beautiful land, that farm, was put into conservancy, and how much of it did we purchase for $10 million? That is the township.
Okay, so we spent something on the order of $10 million. It's my understanding we got something on the order of 30 acres. Maybe marginally more, maybe marginally
including
less.
the point that Darby Paley Road and
yes, we have a portion of that point.
Oh, a portion of it.
Yes, but so important to note that the probably the most important aspect of that development, or to me the most significant, was that the style of development was a cluster style. That and part of the cluster style meant that certain parts of land become, for all intents and purposes, set aside.
Yes.
We don't own them, which is good. I would rather have somebody else own the land and set it aside in the manner that we want than for us to own it. So in order for the developer to cluster the homes, they had to have a significant amount of space that becomes set aside as a condition of us allowing them to cluster the homes. And one of those areas was the top of the hill. So we own a portion of it. A portion of that.
So that's why the berm is going in at the top?
Yes. You know, again, I don't know that these homes need to be shielded. My gut tells me they're going to be beautiful homes.
Yeah, I'm sure they will
that are fine to look at. But in the development process for several of the commissioners, it was important to shield that corner. So they bought a portion of the corner, and then in the development of the project, that bermed area was part of the area that is essentially traded for non-use.
Got it.
And then the berm and the landscaping are intended to, you know, I think it'll be a strong filter rather than a shield, meaning that, you know, you'll still see buildings through it, but it will be softened by the landscaping and the topography.
Now, I think the approval of the plan was the right thing to do, because it could have been a heck of a lot worse. Much higher density.
Yes.
Would have dumped much more traffic onto two roads that are already choked with traffic.
Yes, I voted for the plan, and I believe that the plan is a good plan, meaning that it's the style of development makes sense. The style of development at that particular location. That's not a style that makes sense in downtown Wayne, but it's a style that makes sense at that particular location. And then it did allow us to have a sizable amount of land set aside by the owners of the property, not by the township.
I'm sure you'll be happy when some of these issues are finally resolved. It'll make your life a little easier. I mean, you must be putting in an awful lot of time on just the things we've talked about. The budget, money, three major changes in the 6th Ward.
Yeah, they're all very interesting. I have to say, I enjoy the job. I enjoy the issues. My wife joked when I came here. She asked me how long the interview would be. I said around 30 minutes. She asked if she could pay you to do it for longer. So I do enjoy the issues. I find all this stuff very interesting, and I'm having fun doing it. So.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick. I enjoyed it.
For what you do for us.
Thank you.
I've been interviewing, spending some time with Don Curley, the Commissioner, Radnor Township Commissioner for the 6th Ward, and I hope that the information he's provided has shed some light on some pretty complex issues in the township. Until next time, this is 30 Minutes. I am Rick Anthony. Take very, very good care of yourselves.